Room, you
Yeah,
guys.
sure.
What's up, home grids?
1 second, we're almost there. Hang on. There was just a little glitch. Hang on.
Hey, Vinicia.
The newly minted Northern Florida resident, Mike Morbido. Nice to see you in the room, sir. Welcome. Glad you could make it.
Okay, we're live on YouTube.
All right.
All right.
We're
All right,
on. Took a minute. The
tech is
authentication was a little
happening.
bit, the two-step authentication was about 6 steps this morning. So at least we know we're secure.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. As you can see, and welcome to Tour Management 101. As you can see, we're missing two of our compadres. Mark and Henry are not with us today, so I'm jumping on the intro.
That's awesome.
What you lose in sexy radio voice, you gain in a weird foreign accent. So how about that?
And mad jokes.
and sexy beard on Doug.
Oh, come on. Anyway, welcome to our continuation of our Spotlight On feature, where we highlight the different departments on the road and take a deeper dive into what those look like, what the role involves, and how they interact with tour management. And today we have a spotlight on audio. Whether it's mixing audio for front of house for the audience, mixing monitors for the artist, and performers, overseeing broadcast mixes for TV and radio, or the myriad of support and vendor crew roles required to build and maintain touring audio systems, the audio department is a critical component in the successful execution of any touring live production, big or small. So this one is gonna be great. And I'm gonna hand off to MJ to introduce our expert guests today.
Thanks, Doug. So as Doug said, live sound mixing is, according to Wikipedia, live sound mixing is the blending of multiple sound sources by an audio engineer using a mixing console or software. The live sound engineer listens and balances the various audio sources in a way that best suits the needs of the event. But it is so much more than that. Today, we have 3 guests with us who work at the highest levels of live audio to give us an inside look at what they do. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because nobody can do it better than them. So let's start with Krysten.
Hi, everybody. My name is Krysten Dean. If you met me on the road, everyone calls me KD. I am a system engineer. I work for 8th Day Sound. I guess now I should say Claire Global because we merged. I've been touring for a little over 10 years and I worked with some of everybody. 8th Day is a big company, so we get big artists and small artists.
Yep. And Zach.
Hello, everyone. This is Zach. I'm a front of house engineer. Been in the game of touring for about 10 years. Born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. I live in Atlanta, Georgia now. Lived in New York for about 5 years. I've worked with Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott, did a few Kanye shows, Jasmine Sullivan, Kid Cudi, Solange, and there's probably a whole bunch of others I'm missing, but I enjoyed working with all of them. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
So just some small club touring, you know, small shows.
I did start in clubs. I did start at BB King's in New York.
Oh, right on.
Nice.
Great place. Well, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And Paul, just, tell us who you are, and then we'll start getting into all of you guys' backgrounds.
Good afternoon, everybody. Paul Klimson, currently Niles, Michigan. Lived in many places because of music, but this is where we're at now. Over the years, John Legend, Justin Timberlake, Drake, The Roots, spent some time at NBC on The Fallon Show, both iterations, late night and Tonight Show, some Broadway, some studio, anything audio.
So more small club stuff. Okay, carry on.
Tiny clubs.
All right, Paul, let's go back to you. Tell us how you got into the business and what trajectory was to where you are now.
I think it's similar to why a lot of us get into it, is just for the music. It's always been about the music, and growing up playing in bands in high school led to being in studios quite a bit, and that was kind of where it dawned. The old aux knob reverb happens. That's when I was hooked. I was kind of into the production side as a younger person, and through college it was just fun building the music. And then live took over, and I kind of had a foot in both sides. Moved to Nashville, did a whole bunch of CCM bands back in the day. Small Town Poets out of Atlanta, The Waiting, 5 Iron Frenzies, Supertones. And it was all just baby cuts. And that was a really good time because of club mixing. Those were all club tours. You just didn't know what you're going to get day to day. We weren't told most of the time what we were going to get day to day. So you'd walk in and see DBX compressors one day, and you walk in and see, K&T the next day, and you just got used to it. So 5 bands a night was most of that touring genre. Lots of clubs, usually 1 bus and trailer with 3 bands on it. And then that led to country, a little bigger budgets, a little bigger stages. Tanya Tucker was the first person out of the gate, which was an amazing education kind of in the old ways of doing things, Nashville style. And that led to moving to New York, jumping into Broadway, got on the John Legend tour with 5-1. And that was the first eye-opening experience of the real world. And then from there it was just all the baby cuts all the way through, just tiny little steps.
Great. Zach, why don't you tell us your story?
Oh, okay. Well, like I said earlier, I was born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. I had a great 9-to-5 kind of corporate job at a public utility company, but I was doing sound at my church on, Sundays, mega church in Indianapolis, 3 locations. And I found a passion in what I was doing as far as live sound. That was 10 years ago. I started gravitating to just being at the church on my days off at work and just doing the day, or just learning all I can. And it was kind of at the beginning of digital consoles. So I would just go into the church and just turn a mic on and just play around. It was a Yamaha DM2000. So I would just play around on that and just see what happens if I hit this button. And from there, I found I really wanted to do this because I loved what I was doing, and I wasn't necessarily happy at my 9-to-5, even though it paid really great. So I sold my house, packed up my bags, moved to New York City with literally $1 in a dream. And I hit the concrete. I didn't know anybody in New York, in Brooklyn. And I made a list of every venue that had a stage, a microphone, radio station. And I just walked around and went into every venue and just met everybody who, if they were open, in New York, you can just walk and just kind of go in places. So,
how old were you when you moved randomly to New York?
Was 10 years ago, 37.
It's interesting. And I asked that question because lots of young 20-somethings, or, when you really have that fire, will pick up and randomly move to someplace like LA or New York, but to, as an established adult, make a change, sell your life and move to New York City at 37. That's later than that usually happens. Kudos to you for having the guts to do that. I just wanted to see where you were in the timeline. I did something similar moving to LA later in life, but it was not as cut and dry as that.
Yeah, I think in my
I knew people. I was already in the business. You at 37 went to New York with no contacts.
Nothing, nobody.
That's amazing. That's good for you. That's amazing.
I read a book. It's called Now, No Opportunity Wasted, and that kind of helped me just have the faith to make that move. Because coming from Indianapolis, a small city, and going to New York, which is the biggest city in the world, it was an eye opener. But I'm so glad I did it. And from there, working at BB King's, I got my first gig working in there. And from there, just kind of, meeting new people and getting, from one gig to another. And I ended up working at a radio station in New York. I got a gig out of that. I was a board operator / producer at an AM channel in New York. So I just was hustling. I felt like wherever there was a microphone, there was a need for me. So that's the kind of approach I took.
And what was your first tour then?
Actually, my first tour was Solange, and I got that working at the radio station. A guy named Marlon Bowers. He works with Beyonce now. Him and James Berry. I know everybody know James Berry. They came into the radio station, and I said, "Hey, you know, I'm a board operator when I'm not on the road. Here's my resume. You guys need a tour or a front of house engineer." And I guess at that point they did. And I bugged James Berry to death. I mean, I called him. I called Marlon. Like, hey, I really want to work with you guys. So I guess my persistence paid off, and they got me on board with Solange. And that was my first tour. And we was opening up for Alicia Keys over in Europe. So that was, thank you, Marlon. Thank you, James Berry, for jump-starting my career.
We often talk about leveling up and getting at what point did you get to the point where you got to where you are now? That was kind of your jumping point.
Yeah, when I moved, I lived in New York for 5 years. I made a bunch of contacts and connections in New York with production managers, you know, artists. And after 5 years, I said, okay, I really don't need to be in New York to, you know, make it in this industry. So I moved to Atlanta, where the cost of living is much better, has a good airport to get in and out of. And I moved to Atlanta, and from Atlanta, it's a different scene than New York. It's pretty busy. So I really didn't miss a beat. So yeah, I just knew it was time to move from New York to Atlanta. And I'm here for now.
Krysten, let's hear your story.
My story is kind of similar to Zach. I graduated from high school and I went to college to become a mechanical engineer. I worked in the auto industry for 10 years, and I also got my master's in mechanical engineering because I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I came from a two-parent home with both teachers, and everybody in my family went to college. So that was just the natural progression. I was working in the auto industry, and after a while, I just realized I really hated it. Like, I dreaded going to work. There was nothing exciting about my job. Like Zach, I worked at my church. I did audio at church, but I didn't have enough time to like really get into it because I always had like travel or projects for work. So eventually I decided to quit my job and go to Full Sail so I could learn how to do audio engineering. But in my case, I didn't have to pay for all of Full Sail. The church that I was attending at the time sent me, and the deal was they pay for school. I come back and work for them for 5 years. So I did that. Although I didn't stay for 5 years because it was right around the recession of 2008 and they couldn't continue to pay me. So I ended up leaving and moving back in with mom and dad at 30. So that was a big change. So then I talked to career services at Full Sail, and they were like, you know, one of the biggest sound companies is up there where you live, because I'm from Cleveland. So I decided to send in my resume, and Tom Markle called me in, offered me an internship, unpaid at first, which I was fine with because I was with mom and dad at the time. So that all worked out. And then from there, I've been around the world a few times working with 8th Day.
Hey, Doug?
Yeah, and I think you're 3 great examples of the levels of ingenuity and personal drive it can take to get your start in this industry, but showing that there's so many different ways into it. And that's awesome to hear. Thanks, you guys, for sharing those. As I alluded to earlier, there are more roles in the audio department than just the 2 people you see operating the boards, front of house and monitors. So let's on a bigger tour, you know, Paul, let's walk through all of the side stage audio positions and a brief kind of overview of what they do, if you don't mind.
Sure. Usually as a monitor engineer, just by proximity to the gear that's in the area, i.e., you know, amps for wedges, IEMs, the console, the snake split system, if there's a copper snake split system, just having it close just puts a little more responsibility on the monitor engineer, because sometimes you're, you know, traveling without an RF tech, a monitor system tech. Sometimes it's provided by the vendor who gives you the gear for that day. But on a like a Timberlake arena tour, we carry an RF engineer. So top of the day.
Explain RF.
Yes.
What an RF engineer does.
Yes, RF is radio frequencies. Nowadays, with the shrinking of the RF landscape in the world, we have less and less white space to operate in. Essentially, every day we operate 30 to 100 small radio stations out of Monitor World, whether it's a microphone coming to us, a guitar pack going to a pedal board, or an IEM signal going from Monitor World to IEM packs that performers wear with molds. So there has to be some handling of that. You can really get into a deep hole frequency wise in a lot of these big cities with a lot of DTV. There's less slots to put our little tiny signals in compared to their large, powerful antennas that exist in the area. So the RF technician will come in and scan essentially the air to see who's operating, what's in the area. There's a lot of knowns nowadays. You can usually roll in with what we have, a wireless workbench file backed up by PWS's IAS frequency coordination program. We have hand scanners that can find specific frequencies that are happening around us if it doesn't show up on our template that says what's in the area. So between all that, they take all that information in and come up with the frequencies that are clean for the day, plus some backups, and those change day to day. So it's definitely a full-time job. They also monitor during the show if anything changes. Big shows, sometimes a news crew will show up and all of a sudden you've got a reporter on your lead vocal frequency channel, and that has to get sussed out. Luckily nowadays we have some pretty decent technology that transmitters will self-change. Accent from Shure does that. So you take all the tools, you bring extra antennas and extra nuggets to get antennas where you need them on stage. And that's kind of their job for the day, is to make sure our radio lanes are open. We have clear audio to the artist, clear audio back from the artist, microphone wise. The next most important person for me in Monitor World is the patch tech, the person who takes the input list and gets the channels from the stage to the engineers, either into a copper split patch system, or nowadays we all loop our stage racks, and you get into the loop, and then anybody can pick and choose what they want off the loop. But yeah,
Paul, is that the A2 generally?
We would call that an
patch tech?
A2 in broadcast. Yeah, that would be the A2 in broadcast. And A2s are worth every penny. They usually come with their own toolbox of things to do their job, whether physical or software in their head. And just, yes, looping through networking like Dante, absolutely. Get everybody in the loop, then everybody can have access to all the channels. Yeah, patch person is extremely important organizationally, labeling, clear thought as to how it gets from there to here, because there's usually 2 or 3 spots where that can change, whether it's at the instrument, at the stage box, at the split, the dots in my console. I've actually had a patch person help me in my console be like, no, you're choosing the wrong channel. And it was like 10 minutes of it's 36, no, it's 39. And they were able to have their head on straight enough to come dig into my console and figure me out. And I always whoever's job it is, their lane, I delegate to that. So if it's an RF thing, I send the person to the RF person. And if it's that type of relationship, everybody working together. Backline techs, coming up to me during a show, I send them straight to the RF tech. They can handle that stuff.
Amazing. And talk to us about what the monitor tech.
Monitor tech, another clutch position. And these are all support positions, but I keep them equally. Like my techs can come to me with issues, and I will get to where we need to go with that. But yeah, monitor tech, usually in a big tour setup, Monitor World, if the monitor engineer doesn't come in during that time period, it just depends on people's style. We all have our own kind of way we like to approach the day. Personally, I like to be very hands-on. I worked hand in hand with my monitor tech on Timberlake, and we built Monitor World together. And then in turn, anything that he put on musicians, i.e. packs or horn mics, he checked those at the console. I would give him a couple hours because it was 30 some wireless ear packs that he would put on musicians and dancers, and then I would take care of anything I put on the principal, which is three vocal mics, and about 6 packs because some people wore backups that followed him around the stadium. So since I was in charge of those going on to the body, I would do those 6. He would do the others 36. But just, that's your
Tennessee Kids is 36 on stage.
Well, no, it's 16 plus 6 dancers plus 3 security. It's just all the ancillary. Everybody wanted to hear Jay's mix, lighting tech. Yeah,
That's a lot.
it was a lot of hardware going around, and it's keeping it organized. That's the biggest thing. Is there's still sits in my Dropbox. There's a chart from the very first day of rehearsals about who was wearing what. We actually numbered every pack because during rehearsals it ends up, we're at the Izod Center in New Jersey, which is a former proper arena where many of us have been through before they turn it into a very lovely rehearsal space for large productions. But yeah, you would just have packs wandering wherever. So at least we knew who to go look for at the end of the night.
So the tech is your right hand man or
Person.
woman.
Yep.
Doing a lot of the legwork for you, but also giving you critical support as the engineer.
Yeah, during the show, essentially, it's like my hands can't leave the faders. There's just so much going on in a big show that if it's anything that I would get up normally and go do on a smaller show, like a root show, I would go on stage and fix things just because didn't have time to communicate to somebody. Like I knew exactly what to do. But yeah, in an arena show, I can't lose concentration from the desk anytime. So whether it's go up and fix a horn mic because the cable is loose, DPAs get a little funny sometimes. 4099s is the model that we used on horns, and fix the cable, or someone dropped their pack and the battery flew downstage off the front lip. I would send my tech up to kind of go handle that. And it was good that he also dressed them. He had a really good relationship with the band, and that was clutch.
Yeah. And then there is obviously the monitor engineer himself. Most people watching will know what you do, but for anyone who doesn't, can you give us a quick overview of your position?
So monitor engineer, or in broadcast they call it foldback because there's lots of TVs and studios that are monitors. But yeah, monitor engineer, rock and roll style, is taking in all the audio off the stage, inputs, video playback if it comes to you in a broadcast situation, host mics from the A1 who mixes the broadcast feed that goes out to the general population. Anyways, anything that a musician needs to hear comes to my desk, and I get to dole it out appropriately to the musicians on a need basis. A couple mixes. One mix that I would call is a musical mix, a creative mix. Usually artists will let me mix their ears like a front of house mix with all the tricks, multi-band compression on the outputs, just whatever we need to do to get those ears to inspire the artist's performance. And then the other one I kind of have is utilitarian mix, and that's like there's a mix with the guitar on top, and it just kind of is different. I'm not sure how to describe it, but you're tailoring to that specific player more than making something that is listenable after the show.
Yeah, you're basically creating a different show for each musician, depending on their preferences, what they want to hear more.
Exactly. Choose your own adventure.
Exactly. And in, you also mentioned a couple of other ancillary roles, comm tech, preamp tech, if you're on TV.
Yep. Comm tech as my after patch. I think comm is the next important one, especially on a TV show, because I can't be picking up a phone handset or putting on a headset with a mic during a mix because my ear molds have to stay in. So that's one of the things I ask for first on a one-off. It's a broadcast, is I have to have comms into my desk, 2 different routes, one for director and one for the audio channel. And a good comm tech, I know if it's a good comm tech if they walk over and hand me the cable that goes from the back of the panel into the desk. That's usually the rite of passage moment of the day. If not, I have one in my Pelican that I've made that fits a few different comm panels. But comm tech will make sure that any wired comms work. So dropping panels at production desk, front of house desk, monitor desk, video village, essentially connecting everybody so that the director can talk to who they need to talk to, the audio person on stage who can walk around wirelessly with a belt pack can talk to only the people they need to talk to. It's like reinventing cell phone matrices per show basis.
So you got a lot going on in stage left.
And the more technology has grown, the more things we've been able to not say no to.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, because just super quickly, you know, can you speak quickly to the having a crew mix with tech packs and with comms over the mix so that the backline techs can, for example, communicate?
Oh, absolutely. I usually on large shows, I'll have a tech mix or 2 or 3 tech mixes. Some people don't want to listen to click blazing all night in their ears, so I usually do some matrix outputs of if they're a backline tech doing 2 guitar players. Either I'll do a pack that they can change frequencies on and listen to their player, but I always have a tech mix for that particular tech, and they'll get stuff on top of what is going to the musicians. We take the musicians mix, and then on top of that put talkbacks that will duck the musicians mix, and that can be chosen. Like, I don't need to hear the bass techs talk back, but I do need to hear. So there's a bunch of that matrix thing to figure out who needs to hear what when and to what extremity. But yeah, essentially I can give. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you know, one thing that I find fascinating is when the tour gets to real Groundhog Day, and you know, you've been rolling for a minute, you got the drummer playing and talking to his drum tech about the football, you know, or
anything,
you know,
yeah.
They're having full-blown conversations there.
Oh, absolutely. And no one else knows because we're all wearing
that always
in-ears.
blows me away. Like, I'm sitting in my office and I get a call on the radio, usually from the monitor engineer, possibly from a backline person, going,
so and so needs
what? Hey, like, the drummer wants to know what the score on this basketball game is, and I'm like, what are y'all talking about? If you're in the middle of a show, like.
Martinez had a question about how long it took to figure this out, and essentially it was all just being in hot water and then going, next time I need to do this and be prepared for this. I do require on in-ear gigs that everybody has a talkback, or sections have talkbacks. They can, you know, not yell across the stage during rehearsals and, you know, pop an ear out. My goal is if it's an ear band, if everybody keeps their ears in, we will be in a much better place, because then we can communicate together. We can talk music together. The focus of the rehearsal stays on track. There's not side conversations on each side of the stage, you know, and that's just wrangling the energy that we all put into the room and get going the right direction. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of years of just doing a post show, what went right, what went wrong, what can I change, and what things I just need to flush and consider a part of the situation that we didn't have control of. And
when Paul says ears band, typically there are 2 different ways for monitoring the audio for an artist. Wedges, which are floor speakers, basically pointing up at the artist's face. In-ear monitors, which are the wireless option, or a combination of the 2, and that tends to be pretty common for definition there. Okay, let's move on to. Sorry, I muted myself there. We're going to move on to front of house positions. Krysten, can you walk us through those, please?
Front of house, my position is usually as the system engineer, and quite often I'm also the crew chief. So I'm responsible for the whole audio team, minus the front of house engineer and the monitor engineer. So we'll have a monitor tech, an RF tech, a comm tech, and then we'll have PA techs. It just depends on the size of the tour. When we come into a new city, I'm usually one of the first people in the building with the production manager, with the rigger, with the promoter rep, and sometimes the ticketing rep, so that we can just see what's sold in the building, so that I know what seats I have to cover with audio. And then I can also let them know if I have any concerns about whether or not we have enough PA to actually do it, or if we maybe need to move some seats so that everybody gets a good listening experience. So when I go in the morning, we have like a little huddle, we talk about all of that. And then I proceed to work with the rigger on marking points, which is basically taking a piece of chalk, running around on the floor, making X's and rectangles and squares of where we're going to put motor points, so that the riggers can pull chains up to the ceiling so that we can hang our speakers. From then I try to, I take a measurement of the room. I literally draw the room, which kind of goes back to a little bit of my engineering experience. I use software to draw a representation of what the room looks like, so that I can put my speakers virtually in the room to make sure that it's going to cover the areas that we need to have covered. I do that on a daily basis. Every venue is different. Even if I've been in a venue before, sometimes I still have to change things because maybe the stage is in a different position or we're playing a different angle. It's just a day-to-day, figure out what we're going to do that day and go for it. So I'll usually do that after I get it all drawn in the software. I'll go eat breakfast and start angling the PA and making sure everything's going to cover properly. Then my team will come in and we'll get to work. We'll get the speakers in the air. We'll start making sure the stage gets patched. We will get Monitor World in front of house set up. Oftentimes our engineers come in and help us so that we can just kind of get things moving a little more quickly. And PA is the audio system. It's the speakers that we put into the room. It's just everybody just says PA because it's easier to say. But it stands for public address. Then we get everything set up and we will do a virtual sound check. And a virtual sound check usually means that the night before we recorded the show with multi-tracks. So every input that goes into the console, we have a recording of that input in our computer that we usually have at front of house. And then the next morning after everything's set up, after we've checked the PA, we will play back the previous night's show to see how it sounds in that room and make sure that there's no other adjustments that we need to make sure that we have a good show for that night. As a system engineer, I work hand in hand with the front of house engineer. If there's anything that they need, I'm there to support them. If there's anything that I notice that maybe they don't notice, we'll talk about it and then we'll go from there just to make sure that we have a good show. Monitor engineer and front of house engineer have a very good relationship. System engineer and front of house engineer also have to have the similar kind of relationship because we all have to have one another's backs to make sure that we can present the best show for the audience each night.
Right. So, and you've walked us through the day, you know, a great walkthrough of what your day looks like when you get into the venue there. And I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, your role as the systems tech is similar to that of the monitor tech, but to the front of house engineer. You know, you're the right-hand person of the front of house engineer who's mixing the show, correct?
Correct. Yes, and as the system engineer, I'm also able to help the monitor tech should they have any issues. As a system engineer, I basically know how to do all the roles of the audio team. And if anybody has any problems or concerns, they come to me and we figure it out as a team how we can solve whatever the issue is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have systems tech. You also have PA tech at front of house, correct?
Yes. PA techs are the individuals that actually hang the speakers and get the rig in the air. With me giving them the information, we call them angle sheets. It's a piece of paper and it has a lot of numbers on it. And they know looking at that numbers that this speaker has to be angled to this number, the next one to this number. And we get our speakers in the air according to that sheet. And those sheets are specific for the venue and the day that we are in that building. You cannot use a sheet from 3 days ago in the next building. It is not the same. And sometimes we make mistakes, but we fix them quickly. We make sure we use the right sheet for the right day. So I like to label my sheets with what city we're in and what day it is so that they know that they're using the right sheet. And sometimes we do it electronically. It just depends on the PA tech whether they want me to send it to them on their phone or they want a piece of paper.
Okay, and last and potentially most important is the front of house engineer themselves, the person who's mixing the audio for you as the fan in the arena. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that entails?
Yeah, it's basically when I say I'm a front of house engineer to some people, they say, "Are you a DJ?" I'm like, "No." I say I'm the person when you go to a concert, you see the barricades, and I'm usually have the best seat in the house, and it's a mixing console. So I mix the show for the audience, but I can't stress enough how important my job is to have a great relationship with a KD, a systems engineer, because we have to work hand in hand to create the best product the artist, management, the audience wants every night, day in and day out. So the relationship from the front of house engineer to systems engineer is almost like a work wife. You know, we have to have a great relationship and be on the same page and she's listening to things throughout the show that I can't hear, that she or he might come to me and say, hey, I might need to do this to the PA. And I usually, every show or tour that I'm on, I don't get involved a lot during the show with my systems engineers. I trust their judgment about what the PA needs and how my mix can relate to whatever they're doing. I let her or he do their job, and I expect the same in return. But we have an excellent relationship, whoever I'm out there with.
Right.
Can't stress that enough.
That's an important point. You have to trust them because that's their job and that's what their area of expertise. Real quick, Zach, can you talk to us about the average? We've gone over a spread of the roles that you can get on a tour, but obviously that changes tour to tour based on the needs. But let's say a typical hip hop tour, what are you seeing in terms of the audio department size?
Unfortunately, and it's a learning curve for hip hop artists and management about supplying the right amount of crew. So a lot of times the smaller hip hop artists, they come out with kind of a bare bones tour. So we're kind of doing everything. So it would be me, and we go into a club and I'm doing my best to tune a PA with the house guy to get what I want out of it. If we're on a tour, that's usually a little different because it's a bigger tour and they're staffed properly. But for the most part, doing festivals, doing small clubs, I'm usually the only one with a monitor engineer. We kind of do everything.
And I wanted to add that on small clubs, the house will come with in-house engineers, typically clubs, theaters, even amphitheaters. Once you get up into arenas, you tend to find the tours carrying all of the audio department.
Yes.
So that's something to bear in mind if you have support. If you're going out as a support artist, that if you're supporting in a theater, you might be able to use house engineers. If you're supporting in an arena, you're gonna need to speak to the headliner and find out who's mixing. If you're not carrying your own monitor engineer, for example, it's worth checking in with the headliner to see if maybe you can use their assistant monitor engineer. That can be a good way to work around that. And Paul, how many did you have out on Justin Timberlake?
Audio crew was a bus of 11 that was like the crew from the vendor, and then three more of us on the backline bus for 2 engineers and my backline and my monitor tech.
Well, I think it's, for just 1 second, I think it might be important for the folks that are listening to understand how that particular tour was set up, that it wasn't playing one end of the house, that you were playing in the round.
Yes.
And there was all this stuff going on. So for just a quick second, if you could build that image for everyone, because I saw it and I understand why it was so massive and how big this thing was in the middle of the place. So if you could just drop into that real quick before I come back and ask KD some questions.
So as an arena tour, the Timberlake tour was labeled a 360 tour, where we played to essentially the middle of the ice, because we all go to hockey arenas to do what we do, but the middle of where the basketball tip off would be was our center, and it played every direction from the center with a long kind of it was a river essentially. It was a map of the Memphis area, Mississippi River, followed our stage design. It was a little hidden Easter egg that Nick Whitehouse put in there. But so then what happens is we have to get audio to everybody who isn't wearing in-ears and headphones and such, the Gen Pop and such. So we had 6 arrays down the dasher of the arena, which is where the usually the glass is for the hockey games, and those pointed to the bowls, first floor, or first level, second level, third level, and then pointing in towards the ice were think 4 more hangs of a smaller box to cover the floor. And then in the VIP section, we had 2 rings of surround speakers that Andy Meyer was a front house engineer for Timberlake, and he worked with Mike Karatska and Danny Chung in Pro Tools to do a bit of surround effects in the VIP area. Lightning would crash in one corner of the arena and the other during some of the video playback. And what was funny is the way it Dopplered off of the seats. It actually felt like it was coming from outside the arena, because you're getting a bit of that time delay when our brain knows from when we used to chase things in the woods where things are at. We get some of that time with delay behind you, your head shadows in it, you think it's from farther away. So those were cool. But yeah, there was 2 techs every morning per speaker hang just to get them off the ground, because they did a dance with lighting, video, and effects. We were all on the same mother grid, so it was a lot of playing nice with large bundles of cable.
Fascinating. Fascinating. KD, a quick question for you from one of our folks watching, and we think there are a couple of great questions. Who powers up audio? Because we know that we have dimmer beach and lighting, right? So who powers up audio, and who runs those rigs, and where does that happen? Where's that power at? Where's the power?
Part of our morning meeting when I come in the morning is finding out where the audio power service is. We travel with feeder and we travel with power distros. So some of my younger team members that haven't toured as often, they will be responsible for making sure that our power distros get powered first thing in the morning. And we operate our motors from there. We operate everything audio on our own separate isolated service in every venue that we're in. If we have to share, we will share with video, but more than likely we are on our own service just to keep noise interference from other departments out of the audio system.
What are you plugging into? What's your source? Are you plugging into the venue?
Yeah, the venue has a power service. Is usually, we like to split ours. Often we'll do 200 amps on stage left and 200 amps on stage right. And we plug in feeder, 4/0 feeder, heavy, thick, 4/0 copper cable from the power service into our distros.
Amazing. Okay. Another question tangential to that one.
Okay.
Do the system engineers handle the audio processing networks, or is that more of a front of house task? It seems like that's where the roles intersect.
The system engineer handles all the networking for the audio system. Sometimes I joke with friends and I say I'm moving into the field of network engineering because all of my amps and all of my speakers and even our consoles are all on networks. And we have to manage the network so that, for one thing, the amps and they are all on their separate IP address so that we don't have any interference. And then I also travel with spare amps with spare IP addresses. So say like an amp dies in the middle of the show, I can go in the system, reallocate an ID to a spare amp, and then we're just have to move a plug and we keep going. Like the audience shouldn't even notice it. So yeah, I handle the audio networking. At 8th Day, we use a lot of D&B Audio Technic, and all of their processing is in the amps. And then we also use Adamson, and they use late controllers to do their processing.
Amazing. For me personally, I just want to say that the A1s on tours to me are like our resident mad scientists. They're such geniuses. Even in clubs these days, you've got guys running around with iPads. I find it absolutely fascinating. KD, thank you so much for those excellent, concise answers.
I saw one note. Somebody said something about Dante. We also use Dante. It just depends on how we set up our system. If we want to use Dante networking to, send information for all the input channels, or if we're going to use actual copper through cages to get inputs to the console. So it just depends on the tour.
Amazing. All righty, we move along. I think we go back over to you, 5-1.
Thank you, ma'am. Hey, and more questions for KD. So we're hitting you hard today. So since you work for the sound company and are dealing with this with the system, are there things that you do pre-tour that makes your life easier and also makes the tour life easier?
So once I guess the general hierarchy for the sound company is we have a sales guy that talks to management artists to actually get the account. And then from there, when they found out what the account is requesting, it goes to a project manager. And then the project manager starts designing the system on what we need, what needs to get pulled, what needs to get built in our shop so that we can get it all set up. And then once the project manager has been working on a while, then they will also staff the tour. And that's when I come into play as the system engineer. I work with the project manager on understanding the needs of the tour. And we kind of map out how we're going to handle whatever the request might be. And then before every tour leaves our building, we build it in the shop. We do a test of everything and make sure every input works, every output works. And then we'll either go straight to the tour or we'll go to rehearsals where we have more time to flesh out any issues, add or subtract things, and just make it customized for the specific tour that we're on.
Ooh, okay. Zach, can you tell us what it... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and there's sometimes when on tour prep, I actually go up to 8th Day or Claire to do my own tour prep with the monitor engineer to make sure all of our files are talking to each other, making sure everything is rocking and rolling. So when we do load in for tour rehearsal, everything is kind of easier. So yeah, that's part of my preparation for a tour also, is to actually go up to Claire or 8th Day. And that works wonders.
Side point. That's a good point for new TMs when you're budgeting a tour. Remember to budget for prep days for your tech crew and check in with them, see what they need. Because if you skip that, miss it out, then you're gonna you're gonna get caught out on that.
And if the engineer can't make it, I'll be in touch with them and ask them, I'll let them know what software version we're running on the console, if they want that, or if they want us to backdate or any kind of communication like that, and ask them to send us their file, and we will check their file on the console that they are going to use for the tour.
Gotcha. Hey, Zach, could you also tell us what a day in the life is for you on the road?
Yeah, pretty much wake up, off the bus, kind of mosey in, take a shower, eat a nice breakfast, and just kind of hear all the noises going on in the room as far as motors, forklifts, just getting a sense of my work environment for the day and the night, just to kind of get the energy. I'm real big on energy of things. So yeah, that's what I do. And breakfast, good, healthy breakfast. Get a little exercise in. If I'm in an arena, walk around, wherever I can on the upper bowl, and wait pretty much for my console to get power, so I can go through the previous night shows multi-track and listen to anything that I thought I might have heard and I want to make adjustments to. So a lot of times it's just waiting around until I'm getting power to my world, and usually that's around 10 or 11. That's usually a good time.
And what about you, Paul? What's a day in the life for you?
I do like to see stuff coming off the truck. So I'm usually bugging people, to be there earlier. It's just, again, with Zach, it's just a sense of, you can kind of get how things are going to go just by watching how things pass by you off a truck, or, what people are focusing attention on that are either part of a vendor that's been supplied to you for the day at a club, or I did walk around the JT crew every day and just check in on each fly point, because they're usually just to the point where they're going to take off from the ground, and it's 2 people per fly point, kind of separate from the group, because people change dynamics if they're in the group compared to one-on-one. And then as cases come in, get them to the right physical location. If it's a day that is not automatic, like an arena tour, I'm in contact with production about sight lines, where people are coming on and off at, which way the artist is walking from, just so that we can leave a huge wide 6-foot lane down the VOM or from backstage. We won't put anything in that area, we won't put any cables in the area. So yeah, physical first, then go find power, and usually it's coming up right behind you at that point from whoever the system tech is bringing it to you, i.e. carrying the feeder to you. Get power plugged in, get things, all the lights humming, and start with RF. Either check in with the RF tech to see how it is where we're at, or start laying out packs and going over my stage plot input list to see how many humans do I have, where are they standing, what transducer do they require, whether it's an IEM pack or a wedge or a side fill or a drum sub. So you start laying out the things I got to get sound into. I usually like to label all my packs myself, go through all the settings, make sure that there's no limiters on, there's no weird EQs on the pack itself. And then start focusing back on transmitters and receivers, make sure their settings are correct. Just have an overall organization and work to the point where I'm comfortable handing 2 pieces of hardware off to a musician, the pack and a mic, or just their pack and ears. I'll check on tours. I will listen to people's molds and then re-clean them. Obviously for code, I got to figure out a few things, but on Timberlake, I would listen to his molds physically to make sure they were doing the right things, and then clean them very well, vacuum out the ports on his IEMs, just keep them nice and shiny. And then from there, you're just working towards getting a band on stage by getting to a line check. And I'll usually preemptive line check if front of house is still working, just to make sure everything works from deck and backline to us. Usually backline's got some funny things happening that aren't normal. If an amp has to be placed farther away, now we have an extender to get to that amp. Is that working? Is it, operating properly? Yeah, just keep working towards that point of where we all come together. Front of house engineer gets on talk back. I can hear front of house. I can talk to the stage. Stage can talk to me. If I have talkbacks, the rest of it is easy. If we can communicate, the rest is easy. And then get to that point where we all come together, backline engineers, do the line check. We know we're good. We can hand off the party to whoever's running the show with the band after that.
So much great information. I wanted to have a moment to talk with you guys because we touched on some really important keys for how you keep yourselves well on the road. We talk about this quite a bit, and we are definitely trying to teach a culture of taking better care of ourselves on the road to our students, and remind it, to our friends who are listening as well. As we get back, taking care of ourselves should be a priority. So Zach, yesterday, you touched on some of the tricks that you use to maintain your physical health. And it was really interesting because you were able to draw such a parallel between your mental and your physical health and your state of mind and your peak performance. So would you share a little bit about your philosophy on that with our listeners today? You're muted, darling. There you go.
You got me. Yeah, I'm a firm believer in our mind is our most powerful muscle that we have. So it took me a while to understand that. So about 2 years ago, I made lifestyle adjustments for my body, eating healthier, exercising more, lost a bunch of weight because my self-confidence and self-esteem was getting in the way of my mixing and creative focuses. So I made a pledge to myself is I'm gonna work on me, my mental state. And from my mental state, it helped my mixing ability tremendously. Exercise, eating right, focusing on positive things, because as a front of house engineer, especially, you have so many critics judging your work every night, whether it's management, whether it's social media, whether it's, band members, friends saying, the drums aren't loud enough or the bass is not loud enough or whatever. So you have constant critics and critique coming at you from every direction. So as a front of house engineer, I have to be sharp mentally. So part of that for me is just, I have a routine, just eat right, try to get as much exercise on the road and focus on positive elements of life. Because, I love what I do and we all love what we do, but we have to stay healthy mentally. And, it's real important for me now. I just have a totally different outlook on life.
Thank you so much for drawing the line between your mental, your physical, and your peak performance, because I think that we in the past have gotten into a situation where we believe it's okay to run yourself right into the ground and operate as a shell of yourself. In fact, it's not, and you don't do your best work that way. So we're really keen on figuring out ways to treat ourselves better so that we have more longevity in the business. Krysten, how does your physical and mental health affect your day?
Similar to Zach, I had to make a conscious choice to take better care of myself. I've never been much of a drinker, but I wasn't exercising, and I was an athlete growing up, so I knew better. And then one time someone asked me, they're like, what's your favorite thing to do on your day off? And halfway jokingly, I said sleep. But I was very serious because we get a lot of interrupted sleep on the road. The amount of sleep we get each night depends on how far of a drive we have to the next venue. And since I'm one of the last ones out of the building and one of the first ones in, my sleep is limited a lot. So getting just enough rest so that my brain can rest and so that I can think clearly for the next day is very important. And even on days off, I try to sit down for a couple of minutes and just see where we're going to be for the next few days till the next day off, so that I can do some prior planning and not have to worry about it like the end of the night for the next morning. What am I going to do? I already have an idea of what's coming.
Yeah, we route ourselves on tour as well, right? Paul, you talk about the constant noise. And I wanted to just mention yesterday when we were talking about this, how much I relate to that. I would find myself taking breaks in the bus bay, reorganizing my day bags or my stuff. And I started to realize that, oh, great, I'm taking a break in sitting next to a bus engine. That is amazing. And I started to find that there was absolute silence in my hotel rooms. Mm-hmm. No TV, no music, zero, all day, just quiet. Mm-hmm. So I'd love for you, a sound man's point of view on that.
It definitely becomes, someone asked earlier how long it took to, train to distinguish all that. And it does take a lot of gray matter to just get through a sound check, especially if something breaks during it and now your attention is drawn away, even though your tech is probably handling it. I'm always checking in like microseconds if it's going the right direction. Do I need to alert production that we might have a hold? So yeah, when you kind of get through all of that fog of war, getting out of the building is always good. Luckily there was a bunch of us who played disc golf, and we had a portable goal to use in the parking lot, and just getting out in the sun is important, obviously. But I did realize at one point that we were going from bus, which is, loud engine generator, into room with now, piles of PA pink noise. Maybe there's a drummer smacking a kick and, they're tweaking that. And you do block it out kind of because you're thinking about everything else, but you are getting your human entity is getting pulverized with just different sounds that aren't necessarily, it's like when the band plays everything, you can pick out each piece, but it's still being inflicted on your body to decide what that information is. I always would put my molds in after sound check and go to the back lounge and just put on anything that had no rhythm, moving, just nice atmospheric stuff, and shut it down. Like actually try to turn off my brain doing the computations of what just happened at sound check.
Interesting. KD, yesterday you said something that we all, I think, found so interesting, is that you can tell what went on the night before with what you put in your body affects how you hear. Can you share with us a little bit of that insight? Because that was such an insightful thing for us to hear yesterday.
Yeah, we can tell, like if a band decides to sound check, we can tell if it's going to be a good evening based on if they're asking for a whole lot of things, like they want to change their mix, something that they never have asked to change before. It's been perfect for weeks. And then all of a sudden they ask for something. And you're like, what's that about? We can tell as the engineers and the techs that, well, what did you guys do last night? Were you partying last night? Was there a lot of drinking going on? Because it does change how your body processes sounds.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So
So
interesting.
amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
We had a moment yesterday also, just to touch on auditory triggers. What we talked about, I'll do the noise for you guys. This noise, that is the sound of the PA coming online. And that makes me immediately reach for my tickets. I need to know that my tickets are in my hand, that my guest list, like it's a time signature. The sounds of the day are time signatures. Motor boxes coming off the truck. We know that load in is going well and things are moving. We're going. The white noise from the PA, we know now that sound check is about to happen. Within a marked period of time, we need to check the dressing rooms. Is everything ready? Do we have tickets? Is this part of the day happening according to time signatures and sound marks? So that was really interesting.
I think it's really interesting too, the whole thing about like when Adrian spoke about peak performance, it's like in some ways, like you guys are like athletes, like you have to take care of like what you put in your body, how much sleep you get, your mental state affects your ability to hear and do your job. It's really high level stuff. And I think, people see, oh, those are just the sound dude, like the sound lady. It was like, really, there's so much high level, performance and physicality to it. So
Remember
I just say is-
how many steps we asked Katie did she do in a normal
Oh, yeah.
arena day?
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday? Share that
Yeah,
with us, Katie.
I do about 20,000 steps according to my Fitbit, or that's about 10 miles every show day.
So you're definitely athletes, but I wanted to say to everyone in every position on tour, buy some good earplugs and buy multiple pairs of them, because I'm dealing with hearing loss and tinnitus, and that only goes one way. There is no recovering from it once it gets to a certain point. So protect your ears you should be doing it anyway if you're going to shows, but if you're working in live music, you really need to protect your ears.
Yeah.
So Paul and Zach, this is to you. Let's briefly touch base on what goes into doing TV or promo. You often don't get to touch the mixing board, or you're using the gear that they have in the studio, so you don't get a lot of options. Can you talk us through the experience of how you navigated on TV with your artist?
As far as for TV, most artists bring me in to kind of monitor broadcast mix, maybe throw some delays, faders, or make sure the reverb is right on certain elements, and just sit next to the broadcast engineer. As far as promo runs, it's a lot of times you come in and you fly in the day before, do a sound check, and it's kind of a throw and go. It's really not they don't really spend a lot of budget on promos, which is kind of unfortunate, because it's really important, for promo, because you're promoting a new album. So I kind of wish sometimes they would put more, I guess, budget purposes and money to rehearse for promo runs, because they are important.
Paul?
The more mechanical side, there's definitely a lot of interesting moments in broadcast. You're walking into a place that already works and operates and runs. Somewhere where Fallon, we operated 5 days a week with bands for all of late night and a lot of Tonight Show. They still do. Well, before COVID, they were doing 5 bands a week, and I was lucky enough to have be on the guest engineer side as well as the host engineer side. And I tried to run it as close to a festival as possible, where I guided the engineer through, their day at the show, helping them with the pitfalls. And, the gear they were looking for wasn't usually the gear we had already installed. So there was a little bit of, I'll get you started and then hand it over. So you're just down to faders at that point. Luckily I was able to do all the advances for Fallon. So I had 5 bands worth of information prior to that Monday ready to go. So I knew what the challenges were going to be coming in. But there's definitely kind of, I'm there to protect the show's integrity, because you can get off the rails a bit sometimes. Just the nature of the beast of having creatives in front of you. And while that the engineer next to me, the guest engineer, is there to protect the band's integrity and make sure they're getting what they need. But yeah, TV is definitely something that needs a lot of communication. Days of are crazy. Whatever you locked in before you got there, that will happen. If it's an oh by the way, it will not happen, and that can get pretty draining if you know you hit your head a bunch of times. And yeah, lots of communication.
That's a great point. And one thing I find fascinating, particularly given the cliche of the grumpy sound engineer, which does pervade sometimes in our industry, is the dance that you have to do between the touring engineer and oftentimes the house engineer at a radio station, at a TV show, even at clubs and theaters, to, let's say you don't have hands on the board like in TV, to get across what you need to communicate from the artist side without telling that person how to do their job. And I've seen that's a very delicate task. Paul, let's start with you. How do you approach that task? And how do you? Obviously your interpersonal skills are going to be really important in that situation, right?
Yep. Part of it is you kind of do a quick assessment of what you're up against. If the house engineer doesn't have a deep of toolbox as what you're bringing, you start triaging. You start giving up things. You start giving up part of your agenda. It's not going to be perfect. Luckily, I've worked with artists that I can walk up to and say it's not going to be great, but we'll get through it, and that's fair. Obviously, I want to make sure that I have a relationship with management to have that freedom to go do. Definitely chain of command, work it backwards. But really, it comes down to the communication of breaking it down to like telling a toddler, I need this and this and this for my lead drummer. You kind of, like, most of us who've mixed in TV, and there's definitely a new class right now of younger engineers in TV. Most have toured, so we do have most of them do have a bit of outside real world experience. But yeah, you just you figure out what's the bare bones to get this broadcast done today, and you kind of triage to that point.
Right.
And if it gets really weird, then you bring in backups.
Krysten, in your role, you have to deal with a lot of the local crew and especially unions. And you have to balance with their rules of what the tour needs to get done. So can you talk to us a bit about how you approach that?
Well, I'm the type of person that I kill people with kindness. I try to be polite to people, show them respect. I mean, I'm a guest in their building, first of all, even if I've been there before. So I try to establish a relationship with them, just, small talk, make sure that they feel comfortable around me, I feel comfortable around them, and then get them involved in helping us get the system together. A lot of stagehands get upset when we do all the work because they're there to help us. So I have to encourage my team, like, guys, have those guys over there do XYZ for you, because that's what they're here for. Like, we are not going to do all of this by ourselves. We have to work as a unit.
For sure. And Zach, you are on the front lines. You're having to deal with critique from the artists team, management, friends, family, and even now in social media age, people on the internet who maybe heard the show being recorded on an iPhone. So how do you approach managing all those competing influences?
Yeah, it's a lot. It can be a lot at times. You have to, for one, be confident in what you know how to do. I'm confident in my mixes, confident in my craft. That will portray confidence when I'm having a conversation with management or the artist, to let them know that I know what I'm doing, and it's not necessarily reflective of what you're hearing on a cell phone or on YouTube of what's going on in the actual room. And one thing to kind of one of the weapons that you have to kind of counterbalance that is just the virtual sound check, just multi-tracking the show and having the management or artists come out the front of house and let them hear the show. And sometimes I've been like, hey, let's go to, get your phone out. Let's go to, where the video was recorded in the arena. You record it, and then you tell me if it sounds exactly what your own ears are hearing. So it's kind of just like, just having confidence in my mixing skills to overcome a lot of, self-anointed sound engineers that think they know what they want to hear. That's being polite. But I respect everybody's opinion. And but my main boss is the artist. I mean, I have to, listen to what the artist wants to portray in his show or her show.
Yeah, and that's something that, me as a tour manager, or I think this also applies to production managers, and if time allows it, I like to get out into the arena, out into the theater, just a couple of key points in the set to hear for myself, because I know how the show sounds, I know how the show should sound, so that if an email comes into me from management saying, oh, we had a, this came up, this critique came up, I can say, well, hold on, I was in the room and it sounded great, or I was in the room and I agree, or I think arming yourself with a bit of information as a TM or a PM can really go a long way to not necessarily letting something like that escalate. Because if I can go into the room and say, somebody says, oh, there was too much kick drum, and I was there and it sounded great, how it should sound for the artist, then that issue is a non-starter for me. So I think that's a good.
And a lot of it too is just communication. A lot of times, I'm the type of person where I don't like hearing second and third rate conversations coming to me. I would prefer the tour manager or the production managers to come to me directly and just give me the information to correct a problem or whatever. I just hate misinformation, so it's just communication is real big out here. Like he was saying, I'm fine. I'm perfect when all the talkbacks are going so I can talk to everybody. I feel the same way about communication. Like it just has to be communication, or things get distorted, and out on the road, things can get really bad really quick. And you never want to have it escalate to that, point on the road. So communication, that's a real big thing. And don't be afraid to tell the truth. A lot of times we get out there and, people are afraid to, tell the engineer the truth. I love the truth. That's the only way we can learn and, be better. Don't sugarcoat it. Just tell me.
Well, Zach, that leads us into a very, very good segue on our next section. And we've learned so much from all three of you today. So thank you again. So leading into our next segment, and I'm going to start with KD. Here at TM 101, we had started TM 101 to kind of teach and guide people and mentor people. And we all mentor college students and other people on our own outside of TM 101. So KD, when you were coming up, who were some of your mentors and who are some of your mentors today, and how did they affect your career?
When I first started in touring, I had never toured before. I had done sound at church, but never like a road tour anywhere. And one of the other guys that worked in my shop, his name is Benar. A lot of people know him. He's one of the best people that ever walked into my life. He took me under his wing. He kind of showed me the ropes. My first few tours, he made sure I was introduced to people that would be able to help me if I had questions, or just letting people know who I was. Like, she's out here, she belongs, make sure everything's cool with her and allow her to do what she knows how to do. And one of the things that I will always remember that Bernard told me, he was like, when you're out here as a tech, whether you're a monitor tech or you're a front of house tech, you have to know the show, because it's not a matter of if you're going to have to mix it for your front of house or monitor engineer, it's a matter of when. And that has happened to me at least 5 times. So that was probably the biggest advice that I got from him, just starting out, just paying attention and knowing what's going on with your job and being able to support your engineer should something come up. On one tour, one of my front of house engineer, he lost his mother. So I had to fill in for about 10 shows as system tech and front of house engineer for him, because as he told managers, she's here, she knows the show. We don't have time to bring somebody else in and teach them how to do it. She can handle it. So I had to step in and do that for him.
So many of us know who Bernard is. Could you tell our listeners Bernard's last name?
Bernard Farabee.
Thank
He's
you.
from Cleveland. He also works at 8th Day, and he's been in the business for a while, and he's just an all-around good guy.
He's
even
a very,
tempered.
very nice guy.
Every time you see him, he's the same guy. He's nice and steady.
Mm-hmm. Very knowledgeable as well.
Yes, yes.
And what about you, Paul? Who were some of your mentors when you were starting out, and who are some of that you have today?
Biggest through the largest spots was Dave Scaff. He's a Claire guy now. Helped to birth the profile when it was Digidesign. He gave me the call for when NBC was looking for a monitor engineer for the Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. When I was thinking about leaving Fallon to take on the Timberlake tour, he was the first phone call to, like, here are these two things. And all he said was, you'll know it in your gut. And hung up, and I knew exactly what to do at that point. Yeah, he's been around. He's been around to see most of all the points. Good person, good person to fall in with. And I think the same with KD is our mentors know they can't do everything. So it helps if there's people around that can do like they do. It just makes it easier. Nowadays, my tech from Timberlake was much older than me. He's a production manager by trade, audio in the past, Paul Manuel. And yeah, he came out and saved my butt in Orlando on a one-off where we were issued crew. We couldn't bring crew. And he just started changing batteries on packs behind me, same as the normal day load in. And I turn around and here's 48 packs with batteries going in. And I was like, do you have molds? And after that show, I was like, we have to bring him on tour. And yes, he did wire people up, but he was more there to turn around and go, did I just hear that right? Do I need to respond to that? It was that type of counsel. And he still counsels me now in decisions.
And what about you, Zach? Who were some of your mentors coming up, and who are some that you have today?
I will just go with my mentors today because when I kind of came up, I didn't know, I moved to New York. I really didn't know who to look up to. But over time, I've found some great friends and mentors. One of them is Tim Covart, front of house engineer. I could call him whenever. He's a Christian like me. So a lot of times we don't even talk about mixing. We talk about life, and he's been mixing for a long time. And if there's anything that I'm going through, he's already been through it before, and he can give great advice. Sean Sturge, another one I can call any time of the day. He'll answer, he'll pick up the phone, and he'll give me great advice on anything. Toby Francis, another guy I look up to. And I can ask anything about anything. He's a veteran. He's a veteran engineer. Been around anything I need advice on. I can call. And another one I'm gonna throw out that I met early on in my career in New York, and he gave me a chance on a gig. Is Kyle Hamilton. He's a good mixer.
That's the Diamond Faders. Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
Diamond
yeah.
Faders. Come on,
Yeah,
Kyle.
so-
I love him.
Definitely. So
He's
I feel like
partially responsible for the ringing in my ears too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
7 years with Kyle. I love him like a brother.
Yeah. So I feel like any one of those four guys I can call and get great advice, direction on, any venue, any mix, and just life things. And they're all great guys, great engineers, and they've been around way longer than me. And I respect them. That's the main thing. I respect their opinion.
Well, thank you all so much for bringing so much life to the audio department. I'm obviously without audio in the music business, we'd be in big trouble, but it's just such an intensely technical part of what we do. So thank you guys so much for bringing this. Before we shuffle off, we do want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you guys do in your spare time. KD, you have a organization called Commissioned, and it's K Mission D. So I think that's really awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Back when I was deciding to switch careers from mechanical engineering to figuring out what I wanted to do, I didn't see a lot of examples of people that look like me in careers that I thought I might want to pursue. I knew I wanted to do something in music, and I knew that I was highly technical, but I didn't know much about behind the scenes in the music industry. So Commissioned, I started it as a way to inform minorities and women about behind the scenes careers in tech and in what I like to call STEM sciences: science, technology, engineering, math, and music.
Love that. Where can they find you?
Website's under construction, but it is commissioned.com. We'll be doing some mentoring events. When we get back on the road, I will try and host some people in various cities to just come and see what we do and learn more about behind the scenes, but we have to wait for COVID.
KD, when you get things up and running, please let us know so that we can forward that along to interesting folks and network a little for you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Klimson.
Hello.
Can you tell us a little bit about the fabulous thing that you and Ms. Courtney do for us, the people of touring?
Prior to COVID, Courtney, my wife, Courtney, who's been a roadie wife for 20 years, including most of college. We weren't married, but dating a roadie is hard. But we started the Roadie Clinic in Niles, Michigan. It's our first location. We have a staff of 8 and a board of 12. And we just want to empower roadies and their families with the struggles of the touring lifestyle. So that's very much in progress, and it's been crazy during COVID how fast it's gone.
Can you just touch briefly on the resources that you offer?
Yes, we are in the building stages. We own a building here in Niles, so the idea is to have a location that roadies can come to for a retreat and to rest, relax, recuperate, bring your families, so that you can work on all the things that we miss while we're on the road in a safe spot. And then we have really started during COVID working on the virtual side of it, all of the things we can offer from afar. So yeah, check out our website, theroadiclinic.com. Take a look there, and we're open to anybody showing up virtually or getting hold of us via email, and just to help figure out what this road means on a personal level.
Would you do me a favor? I want to just ask you for one quick second. There was a question in the chat. How does being on the road affect your personal relationships, not being with your family or your loved ones, and how does that affect you? So you touched on Courtney being a roadie wife. We have talked about relationships just briefly. If you could just answer Martina's question briefly for us, I think that's an important thing to touch on before I throw it back to Mary Jo for a fire round of quick questions that she has for you.
The only thing I could really parallel to is working on an oil rig, or close enough to the military, where the moment you walk out the door, you're working. You're being told where to go, how, when you'll wake up, where you'll eat, and that's kind of the micro view of the daily struggles. Zooming out, just cauterization of holidays. I mean, this is the first Valentine's Day we were together since I left college. You start to not enjoying saying goodbye. I quit saying goodbye for a long time to family, only because we were, you truncate Christmas. A lot of clients I had would do a Christmas run. So the 26th, I'm waking up to go to O'Hare Airport or Newark. It's just the thing where your partner is gone from your life, and focusing on, almost 24 hours a day on the task at hand, whether that's getting yourself out of the bunk, changed and cleaned up to go into load in, or into the night, trying to get that phone call in before you roll buses. Those type of things really start to weigh over the years.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Jo.
Anna, Martinez, just to close that one, the conversation about people who tour and their relationships is a very deep and wide discussion, and how each of us approach them, how we are successful or not in all of the relationships in our lives. That's a very, very deep subject. And I encourage you to reach out to people who tour to talk about this, because you'll get a lot of insight. It's a thing, and it's one of our most difficult subjects. Over to MJ for a fire round of cues.
I'm the lightning round person. This is going to be a pretty easy lightning round right now. I want to ask each one of you, what is one important thing you want to see in, well, first of all, I want to ask you, like, how, if you interact with the TM very much, because on a huge tour, you might not as much, but what is one thing that you really want in a good TM or PM on your tours? Like what helps you, or if you're like, I could have the perfect tour manager, the perfect production manager that you interact with, what would something be?
Well, I mostly interact with production managers. Mm-hmm. So I like a production manager who has sort of been in the trenches and not just an office person, who understands, kind of what I'm doing out there and can relay the message to the tour manager or management. Because if I don't have a production manager who doesn't know the concepts of a live show, mm-hmm. what I'm trying to say or do is not going to even relate to him, and he's going to dilute my message or dilute our conversations to management. So yeah. I just like a production manager who can get in the trenches with me, or have been in the trenches.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot. It's like, it helps if you've started out pushing cases or been, a runner, like then you can talk that talk. How about you, Krysten?
Yeah, I'd say the same, like a production manager who's been through it, and really someone that understands your role and knows how to support you in it. And then lastly, some of the most memorable production managers I've had have been production managers that have helped me load the truck at the end of the night, or even told me to leave and did it, because they're like, you need to get rest. I got this tonight, just go. So just having the support is really key for me.
Yeah. And Paul.
Same, support and communication, information going back and forth about what's going on, and just really give us a chance to do our jobs. Sometimes there's changes that happen very quickly and they don't get to us. Again, the secondhand conversation stuff is tough. That's definitely the one, is just give us a chance to do our jobs to the best of our ability.
This is a quick one, I think probably mostly for KD. On a multiple day show, are systems left on overnight? Somebody wants to know.
Favorite answer is that depends. Sometimes we have multiple shows in the same city, but sometimes they're not back to back. If they're not back to back, we have to load out and load back in. We don't like those days. When they're back
none of us do.
When they're back to back, we can usually leave the everything in the building. If we had any issues with power, we'll just leave it on overnight. If we haven't, it's like a daily discussion. Hey guys, are we going to leave power on tonight, or are we going to turn it off? And oftentimes we have to leave it on because maybe the Pro Tools guys needs to do some editing or something like that. So often we leave the power on.
Cool. I think, honestly,
before we log off, I wanted to say hey to some friends of the show. Brandy Lindsay is in the house today, who does our passports and visas. Big love to Brandy. Jeremy Schilling of Road Radios joined us today, keeping us in touch on the road, and also with Wi-Fi, which is important. Jeremy, hope you're well. And Alexander Prince is in the room. Princey, how you doing? Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
I have a quick question before we go. Sorry, this is just from me, actually. If I can ask you guys just generally, if anyone wants to hop in quickly. Let's say you're on a theater tour, small budget. You've got the option of taking your chances with what's in the houses. So you might get a great console one day, you might get a piece of shit the next day. And the budget doesn't allow you to take your dream package out. So maybe you're on a starter console with a with a developing band, do you go for consistency with the cheaper console versus taking your chances with a house desk?
I always shoot for consistency. There are great consoles out nowadays where they're not that expensive and you can get a great sounding show. And if you're an engineer, you should be able to, at our level, you should be able to kind of work any console and make it sound great based off of, no plugins. You can just make it sound great based off of great EQing. So I'll always shoot for consistency, and that usually works for me. Also, I meant to tell everybody, that's in the group chat, I don't have any foundations started up right now, but if anybody wants to get a hold of me, I do have Instagram, Zach Blaine Touring, ZACHBLANE Touring. That's my Instagram, and that's also my website. So if any young engineers have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM or anything. And I love answering questions. I love conversations, stories, anything. I'm free. Feel free to reach out to me.
Same.
Awesome opportunity for
That is
mentorship,
great.
everyone. That's fantastic. Thank you guys
Thank
very
you.
much for that.
I want to also shout out to, first, when we were talking about mentors, I mentioned him earlier before we were recording, but Chris Raleigh was one of my very early mentors, and he taught me firsthand about what it means to be an ally on tour when you're the only woman. So I would like to shout out to him because he was a very early influence on how to uphold somebody who's very young and in charge. So thank you, Chris. And he's also a really good sound engineer. And I also want to give a shout out to Rocky, who's been doing some amazing spreadsheet work for Henry, who is not with us, but she has helped him route his trip. And she's been a long time student of ours. And she is in the middle of about 150th lockdown hell in the UK. So we want to send some good vibes to her today. So we're with you in spirit, Rocky.
Is that Rocky of the amazing spreadsheets?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
We hear you're killing, Rocky. We hear you're
Yeah.
killing
Yes.
logistical spreadsheet maneuvers right now.
So she started out as been following us from the beginning, and Henry asked her to help him with some spreadsheets for his
and
his
she's
road
helped
trip right now.
MJ and I out on a lot of spreadsheets as
Yes.
well.
So,
So I've learned
yeah.
a lot from her.
So we've learned a lot from our students as well. So I want to thank you guys for joining us so much. Like, this has been so great. And I love these spotlight on sessions because there's so many times that when you get out there, especially when you first start, you really don't understand what the other departments do. And audio is like, you see people mixing, but it's like, there's so much going on, So thank you for pulling the curtain back. I want to let everybody know that we are not going to have a session next Monday because we're going to take Monday off because next Thursday and Friday, we are going to be hosting the education segments for Live Production Summit, which is a conference that usually takes place every year in person, but this year it's virtual and the registration is free. So it's going to be next Thursday and Friday, February 25th and 26th. And we're going to have a few sessions with interviews, and we'll have live Q&A. There's going to be some live networking hours. And we encourage you to join us. And it's liveproductionsummit.com. You can register. It is, everybody from anywhere in the world is welcome. So we're taking Monday off of Tour Management 101 to focus on preparing for that. And hopefully you can all join us over the course of 2 days. We're going to have some breakout sessions.
I mean, just to give you guys, we're going to do a leveling up panel on the first day. And then in the afternoons on either day, we're going to do some conversations with spotlights. And we're going to speak with Marty Hom and Angie Warner. Two really fantastically wonderful industry leaders. We're really excited to chat with them. And then there will be live Q&As after each of the segments. So we encourage you guys to sign up over there and see us there next week, 3 times if you can deal.
You can deal with it.
Yep.
So thank you guys for joining us, and we will
and Doug,
see you.
And Doug, you want to drop a tidbit?
Yes,
last
Doug.
plug of many plugs. We're doing a Clubhouse chat on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern about getting your foot in the door into this industry. So if anyone's on Clubhouse, wants to chat, follow any of us, we're all on there and you can find it.
Well, except for Mark.
Except for Mark.
Except for Mark.
He's getting there. He's getting there.
Unfortunately, they're not available.
So, and I just want to mention something to those of you who are on Android. Do not despair. The Clubhouse gang has hired Android developers, and that is on the way. So for those of you who are feeling left out because you have a superior operating system, so I'm told, my Android friends are like, you all can keep your iPhones. We'll be over here on a real platform. You know, we understand. We're down here at the Legion of Apple. It's fine. We're slaves. It's okay. We
But if you are there, please join us.
Okay, end of plugs. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, so we'll see you guys.
guys.
We hope to see you all being very social next week. And thank you to our esteemed guests. That was heartfelt. Audio is my favorite thing to geek out about.
Wait, make that sound again, Adrian.
I'm going to take us out the end of the night.
Take us out.
Wait, sorry. Here we go.
With that, we'll say goodbye. Bye.
I have a future in sound.